You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to a new Rooted Discussion episode of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I am Tom Kinezic, and this is episode 74. And oh man, it's been a while since we had a Rooted Discussions.
I was actually looking today because I was trying to think back. It's been about 10 episodes, so we skipped like 1 month.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought. I felt like we've really been letting people down with not having them.
You hit that time of the year and it gets difficult
it's busy
to gather that many people together in one room.
Exactly, and we've had some really great guests in the meantime, and even when we were planning for this episode, we had some other really great guests that we're pushing off a little bit so that we can get this one in as well.
But this is one we've been talking about for a long time, maybe not out on the podcast, but behind the scenes, we've been discussing this one for a long time, and we've been really excited about this one.
Yeah, so I've mentioned before, I grew up in the nursery industry, but I really only started going to trade shows probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And one of the things I noticed was that it was a really male-dominated crowd, specifically a white male-dominated crowd. And it's gotten better over the years, but it's still not equal by any means. And Fran, now you've been going to these trade shows for a long, long time.
Yeah, off the air before we before we started this, I was saying I can think back in the late 80s and going to a trade show, and I can name probably the 5 women that were, attending the trade show as someone that worked in the industry, not a wife or something like that. So it really was male dominated. And that was my first exposure to it. And it's really changed for the positive since then. But I'm sure it wasn't an easy process to do that because, a lot of people, when they have control, don't want to relinquish. There were certain, when I started in the nursery industry, my boss still had a bar in his office. I was still dealing with like office bars and things like that. Like everything has changed, not just the nursery industry, but life in general for the positive. But it's hard for me to speak on that as a white male.
Yeah. But in native plants specifically, well, all plants, but native plants are for everybody.
Nature's for everyone.
Nature's for everybody. So we can't just have one segment or one demographic dictating what's out there. So we're really encouraged to see how many more women are stepping into this space. And instead of us telling us about how they've done it and how, if you're someone listening at home, how you can do it, we decided to bring them on because we were lucky to have so many fantastic women, and not just women, but people that work in the ecology and restoration and nursery space nowadays.
Very inspirational people that I look up to, and I'm very happy that we're able to have this conversation.
So why don't we start with who's on the left of my screen? And Randy, why don't you introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are and where you're from and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you for having me. This is really exciting to be part of the podcast. This was great to be invited, and I'm glad to have this opportunity. I founded Toadshade Wildflower Farm 25 years ago. There were not very many nurseries at that time that focused exclusively on natives. I came to it by a bit of a roundabout way. Started out in school as a horticulturalist, wound up becoming an entomologist, was trained as a field research entomologist, got my PhD down at North Carolina State University. But the research projects that I was working on really involved very intently the interactions of plants and insects, native plants and insects, weeds and insects. Although I was working in agriculture, I was looking at the plants that were on the side of the field that were in the woodlands. Worked for the USDA for a few years, and then really became frustrated because I couldn't find native plants. I would go to traditional nurseries and they, not only were the plants not available, they didn't even understand what I was talking about. So I founded Toadshade Wildflower Farm 25 years ago so that I could make them more available, not just to restoration projects, but for everyone. So the gardeners could have them order them online or a mail order nursery, we were available to everybody, and we could ship the plants to them, and they could get native plants to put in their own landscapes, in their own backyards, in their own gardens. Because even when I discovered that traditional nurseries weren't carrying any natives, there were wholesalers that were offering them to restoration projects, but really gardeners were stuck with interesting palette of Eurasian species to put in their garden. So that's how I got started here in the industry.
And I should have pointed out before I brought you on, Randy has probably been one of our #1 most requested guests. So we're glad we finally
yeah, I don't know if you
on
know
as
that,
well.
but we probably get at least one request a week to have you on the podcast. So we're excited. to
That's
be
very
involved.
nice. I will thank you for that compliment. You'll have to have me back again.
No, we will. We will.
And Amy, you're next on my screen. So why don't we get to you, and same thing, introduce yourself and tell a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Hi, I'm Amy Green. I've been in the field of environmental studies and ecological studies and restoration since 1974. For over 33 years, I had my own environmental consulting business. We did a lot of wetlands delineation, permitting, wetland restoration, upland restoration, endangered species studies throughout New Jersey and in 10 other states in Washington, D.C. I sold my business about 1.5 years ago. And so now I'm free to work full-time for nonprofits and volunteer work that I've always loved doing. I'm a longtime trustee of the Nature Conservancy New Jersey chapter. I'm chair of my open space committee here in town, and I'm the environmental commission in Raritan Township, Hunterdon County. We like to plant trees and put up deer exclosures and preserve land and farmland. I'm a trustee with the Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey, who protect rare, threatened, and endangered wildlife in the state. Raritan Headwaters, I used to be president of the South Branch Watershed Association before they merged. And my husband and I ran a fundraiser, the Ride for the River. I'm wearing the shirt today. We just had, I believe, our 18th one to raise money for that organization. So,
and were you doing all that while you still owned your own company?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
When the kids were little, I had to cut back, but now they have their own kids, and so of course I'm grandma.
It's funny because I saw you were on the New Jersey CWRP Corporate Wetland Restoration Partnership meeting yesterday.
That too.
And Russ Finari from PSC&G and former guest was saying how this is someone retired. I can't remember who, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's retiring just means you have more time to do everything."
Yeah, Barbara
Bremmer,
Bremmer.
busier than ever.
Yeah.
So.
Barbara Bremmer, who's the executive director of the Nature Conservancy, she used to be like president of J&J Canada, and she retired from J&J and started a new career as head of the Nature Conservancy. She says she flunked retirement. I think it's a good thing.
So, Carolyn, you're next on my screen. So why don't you reintroduce yourself to everyone? Because you were on one of our really early episodes from last June. It was the first episode after my wife and I had our son.
Well, thanks for having me back. I'm a Randy super fan also, so it might have been one of my requests that she came on. My name is Carolyn Lauve, and I'm the stewardship director for the Sauerland Conservancy. I got into this field in college. I worked in the urban forestry department over college, now School of Environmental and Biological Sciences. And I did ecological research. I worked in the Mojave and Sonoran deserts doing invasive species and fire ecology, and then did work over in the New Jersey Pine Barrens for my master's degree, and then came over and started working in the Princeton area and the Sauerlands, and then transitioned into nonprofit work, doing stewardship. So I've kind of been all around in ecology, doing different things, whether it's research or the more applied stewardship side. But I'm really excited to be included in this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And Debbie, you are next. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Debbie Dakova. Thank you so much for including me on this panel. I'm excited to learn about everyone. I am a milkweed entrepreneur, so I kind of take it from a different angle. And so we work at conserving monarch butterfly habitat by paying people for milkweed. And so we are really protecting already biodiverse areas, and we pay people for milkweed. And when you pay people for milkweed, they tend to let it grow and expand their areas. And so it's kind of a reverse ecology, like kind of psychology, where if you can value something, people will create more of what you're paying for. So it's a completely different spin on that. I'm actually second generation milkweed entrepreneur. So we just hit our 34th year in business. I started working with my dad when I was in high school. So
awesome. Part of the reason Tom and I are excited to talk to all of you, because you're all very, very successful as well. So you've all navigated this industry very well, which isn't necessarily an easy thing for anyone. As we know, I know.
And that was until you all started to introduce yourselves. I didn't realize that many of you are entrepreneurs as well. You started your own businesses and built them up, which is also really impressive.
Exactly.
So, and before we get too far, Debbie probably has maybe the only job title that's better than yours, Fran.
That is true.
And that's Fran is consultant sales. Debbie, what is your job title?
I'm the milkweed maverick.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. I have to go back and retool my job title now.
Some people have called me Amy Green, the wetland queen. So.
Oh, there you go.
You know what?
That's perfect.
That's good too.
Now that's a t-shirt, Amy.
That's right.
We'll get that one made for you.
I have great Pinelands Nursery, clothes here too.
Awesome.
So I like those.
Awesome. So I thought it would be a very good place to start, just going back to what drew you to ecology, what drew you to nature, and how you ended up choosing this line of work. Like, what were the processes for you to say, this is what I love and this is what I do? Tom and I were saying the one common thread that we've noticed through everyone that we've interviewed in this industry is they all love this industry. You can go to a lot of industries and there's people that hate what they do, but and there may be aspects of your job that you don't like, but everyone here truly loves what they do. So I always find it interesting where that love came from, because you're obviously all still doing it, or you're all still here. So if we could start there, we'll randomly, Carolyn, what was your inspiration to take up this line of work?
That's a good question. I don't really think there was much of a active choice that went into it. I think it was just that I love being outside, and I'm a naturally very curious person. So I was always investigating something and always looking at something. And when I was in school, again, like the only things that really drew me in were science classes and environmental science classes. And when I got to college, I had thought that maybe I wanted to be a vet or something, because that's the only thing I really thought you could do with science that wasn't being an engineer. And I learned very quickly that I did not want to be a vet. And I had taken an ecology class just as one of those, broad freshman or maybe sophomore year classes. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I started taking more and more. And then I got into the plant science classes, and I was like, oh no, this is what I want. And I just, really dove in, and not even dove in, was drawn in. The professors that I had were so engaging, and the topics and the questions that they were asking were just so fascinating to me that I couldn't get enough of it. So I found myself always doing more, and going to professors and being like, I want to be part of your lab. And they're like, well, we don't have a position. I'm like, I don't care. I'll sweep the floors. I just want to be part of what's happening here. I want to know what's happening. I want to understand the different projects that you're going to be doing. And so, you know, it really, to me, it wasn't an active choice of, oh, I must do this. It was, I have to. There's not another option.
So as a teenager getting ready to go to college, what kind of guidance were you getting from, say, guidance counselors? Were they like, if you don't know what you want to do, that's a difficult position. There's people that are hell-bent that say, I'm going to do this and this is my path. But for someone that doesn't know, and as a woman entering that field, what kind of guidance were you getting?
None.
None.
You know, it was, you're really good at English. Maybe you should be an English major. And, you know, I loved English. I loved reading. I loved writing. But there really wasn't, there was nobody pushing me saying you should do science. Other than my father did environmental science, and he worked for Columbia Lamont Doherty Lab doing oceanography work when I was little. You know, so I kind of seen, you know, some environmental stuff, but again, that was a dad thing, yeah. Not a me thing. And it was all men, everybody on the ship, everybody in the lab, like it was all male. But, you know, but he and my mom also very much encouraged my curiosity. I was involved with Audubon Society when I was little, doing their nature camps. Dale Roselet was one of my teachers. I know she's one of the directors of education now, but back in the day, she was my Audubon Society teacher. But nobody really said you should do science. It was more of, you know, going more down towards English and that realm. But once I really got into those ecology classes, there was just, you know, the professors were very welcoming towards me. And so it just kind of opened the door and I could just waltz on in.
Part of the reason why I'm asking, because at that time, like we were talking about our industry being male dominated. So I'm curious the kind of guidance you're getting from a male dominated industry as a female coming in. Are they steering you in the right direction? Like one of the things Tom's father, when we had his surprise retirement party, Don Kanazik, were all the women that stood up that were saying how Don mentored them and helped them, you know, realize what they wanted to do. And I was very proud of Don for that. But I don't know that that necessarily represents a lot of the industry.
So yes. So I, in the forestry industry is different for me than being in the academic setting. So in the academic setting, I had a lot of very positive, welcoming interactions with both male and female professors. When my first job out of college, I applied for a position with a well-known tree company, forestry company. And I was hired pretty much on the spot and was told I would make the women customers very comfortable. And I was like, that's not why I want to work here, you know, and realizing that he was valuing me because I was a woman and I had better sales for him, not because I was smart or capable or had any idea what I was doing. And I turned down the job right away because I was just like, this is not the type of situation that I want to be in, because I want to be valued for my brain, not because of my gender and what the sales are going to be doing. So I had some really phenomenal professors. One of them, Dr. Jason Grabowski at the Urban Forestry Lab and Records. I am a learning disabled student. And so I'd really struggled a lot, especially I loved science, but I had a hard time with math. But, you know, he was somebody that looked at my disability, not as a disability, but as a superpower. The fact that I had ADHD and my brain would go in all different directions and connections. He was like, I love that. And this is how you can use that in this situation. And so for me, I feel very fortunate for the people in my life that, you know, took something that could have been viewed as a disability and instead saw it as a superpower. So I too have very wonderful mentors, you know, male and female, that really helped catapult me to the direction that I'm going in.
Awesome. Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing that, by the way. That was wonderful. Amy, let's throw it over to you. And I'm going to I'm going to ask you the same questions, but I'm going to throw an extra one on top.
Okay.
And that is, did you always know you wanted to be, like, I want the same progression, but did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or do you feel that that was out of necessity?
Okay, so to answer that question, I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. My father had his own business. He started out as a welder during World War II, started a welding and boiler company, and started manufacturing swimming pools. And we all had to work at his company. And then when my older brothers went out in the business world, they had their own businesses. So I thought that's just what you do. You know?
Were you welding? Like doing all welding? Because that's
No,
another.
my job my first job when I was a little kid at the shop was emptying the ashtrays. So it was a while ago. But later I worked in, you know, accounting and billing and yeah, when I was growing up in the, you know, 50s and 60s, women were supposed to be secretaries or teachers or nurses or stay-at-home moms or something. But I guess I wasn't, you know, that wasn't drilled into me in my family. I guess my father thought I was just another son or something. But they gave me a lot of opportunities. I took there was a Saturday science program for kids at the Newark Museum. And I'd take the bus over there and learn about science. And then I got to go to camp. Growing up in Newark, I was across the street from Weequahic Park. Even the vacant lot next door, I liked to play in. And then when we moved to West Orange, a little more wild there at the time, I'd just go play in the woods. And I figured if I followed the stream all the way, I'd be able to find my way back home. But, you know, like you were saying, Carolyn, just so interested in, you know, observing everything and watching everything. And then in school, I liked the biology, I liked math, I liked geology, really fascinated me. And then the environmental movement was happening in the late 60s, you know, Earth Day, I guess, was 69, something like that. And I got involved and I volunteered at the recycling center and felt that, well, maybe this might be what I want to do. Well, there were no environmental degrees at that time in college. And I was good at math. I said, well, maybe I went to Boston University College of Business Administration. Well, that was really boring. So, you know, I started taking biology and geography. You know, that really grabbed me. Ecology. My biology professor was Lynn Margulis, a pretty famous biologist. George Lewis taught several geography classes, and we learned about natural stuff and had I always loved field trips, my favorite thing. And we learned about things like greenhouse gases and the problem with fossil fuels. This is, you know, like 1972. It makes me cry that we're still working on this problem. Well, that was a long answer to a short question.
No, that's, you know, it made me think of, I don't know if you're familiar with Louise or Heidi Flemer of the Flemer family that owned Princeton Nurseries. But when I started working there, they both shared with me that growing up, even though they were up to a third generation, a family that owned that nursery, which was one time the largest nursery in the world, their paths were lined out from their parents as children. And it was, Louise, you're going to be a nurse. And Heidi, I can't remember what Heidi's profession was supposed to be. And then Bill, you can be part of the nursery. And it was, and they followed those directions because they thought that's what they were supposed to do. Louise became a nurse. I can't remember what Heidi's was, but eventually they gravitated, they wanted to be part of the nursery. And Heidi and her husband own Pleasant Run Nursery now. Like that was what she wanted to do. I think it's funny that Louise left the nursery to go back to be a nurse. Like
That's funny.
like at some point
It's
she decided
plants
maybe
or people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
you know, and it was a different time, and not all of these degrees or professions existed at that time, and I
Right.
didn't even account for that. But it was just interesting at a time where it was, no, you can't do this. You're going to
Yeah.
do this. This is what we see for you.
Well,
And
it
they were
was
like, okay.
also the time when, the women's liberation movement was growing. And I always liked to do things that women weren't supposed to do. Ride motorcycles, play ice hockey, own my own business. Now, I don't have to work as hard at that. It's getting a little better. But
Yeah. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great perspective that I wasn't even thinking about. So I appreciate that. Debbie, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I was bitten by the milkweed bug early, so like 16. I knew I wanted to work with milkweed. And when I went to school, I actually took a honors biology class where we learned about the rainforest, and we took a trip to Belize. And that is where I really dug into biodiversity and the importance of biodiversity. So as a milkweed entrepreneur, everyone wanted to farm milkweed. And I'm like, but that actually isn't the best way to handle this. Like we want to, all the monarchs need successional blooms, and they need this and they need that. It's like all these different things that I learned about from the Belize rainforest, that there's just different interactions with the plants and the animals and all these different things that I was able to bring in a different perspective. It took a while, but the only reason that they kind of went my way was they were going to go out of business trying to farm milkweed. But yeah, so we decided to work with nature rather than trying to tell nature what to do. And it's worked out a lot better for us. So, I am probably more like a fighting tiger. Like, this is what we need to be doing, what you don't want to do, because I think, and I don't want to, men look at like, I can tell anyone what to do, when to do it. Right? With milkweed, it's like, you're not telling me what to do. It's just the plant. And so the plant just fits my personality. And so we work well together.
Well, I was going to say, in general, just changing someone's perception is not an easy thing, but
No.
you tend to do it well. Is that something that you've had to learn, or is that just something that's always been you?
No, I mean, that is something that has been a really long time in the making, because people don't change their minds, unless they're absolutely forced. So it was really, I would go to the ACLA or the American Seed Association meetings when I was, just starting. And that was really interesting because, like you said, it's like I'm one of the only women in the room. And at the time I was 20 something. So it was
I don't want to
pretty interesting situation.
But the seed industry, I think, is still a little bit far behind as compared to the nursery industry. We're involved in the seed industry as well. So I go to some of those trade shows, and it's not, well, what I've been told is there's some women who started going to these meetings, and there were men who did not like it, and they were the only women in the room. And I know these two women, and they're not that old. I'm guessing they're in their early to mid 40s. I don't want to. I'm hoping I'm undershooting too. I hope I'm not insulting them by saying that I think that's their age, but that's not that old to be combating that still, when we've seen so much progress in other industries. So for you to be doing the same thing and being the only woman in the room, that's something that I still see, especially in the seed industry.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure that's an intimidating position to be put in as well. I would imagine. Like, I can imagine how I would feel if that were me. So it's nice that it's come a long way, but we're still really far away. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's great now. There's been progress, and it's great that you can see the progress, but I'm hoping, I'm hoping as the generations go on, like I noticed that, we've talked about this all the time. My kids are a lot more tolerant, or their generation's a lot more tolerant than my generation. My generation's a lot more tolerant than my parents. I'm hoping it gets better. But sometimes if you don't see the history, you don't know, because we've also talked about, like, our kids can see a forest and think that's what a forest looks like. And we see it and we're like, oh, this has gotten so much worse over the last 30 years. Like, you hope that they understand the perspective so that things get better as well.
So sorry to cut you off. It was just something that struck me with the seed industry in particular, that's a tough room to walk into even today as a woman.
Yeah. And I think actually, you probably are aware of Robin Ernst, that is someone who, she and I were there. We're both in our 20s and we're doing our thing. And yeah, it wasn't super welcoming, but at the same time, we both knew what we were talking about. She's amazing at wetland restoration, and I'm an expert in milkweed, and it's just it's a different, like you said, it's a different kind of thing. But to be a milkweed entrepreneur, like, you got to be brave to go anywhere. No one does what you do. So it's just a different thing. And you're at the Seed Association, and so they're like, well, what seeds do you work with? And I'm like, I work with milkweed. Like, what else? Milkweed. That's it. One weed a lifetime. That's it.
But a very important one. That's an extremely important one. Debbie, thank you so much. Randy, how about you? We'd love to hear your experience or your path as well.
My path, it didn't, my path, how did I get here? I didn't really choose this. It sort of chose me. My parents, who would have liked me to have been in a more traditional field, they were very open to letting me do what I was going to do, even though they really never understood what I was doing. We had a creek behind the house. I spent an enormous amount of time in the creek, falling in the creek, getting in trouble from my mother for falling in the creek. She'd then have to scrub my skin off because God only knows what I'd gotten on me. I spent my time in the woods. My brother remembers me from when I was tiny, turning over rocks and playing with the insects that came to the windows at night. I was that kid, and the highlight of my year was going to summer camp, which was down off the Chesapeake Bay. And you're supposed to sign up for different things. I was either in the nature group or I was sailing. Those were the two things I was doing, or just sort of skipping it all together and wandering around through the woods, picking up snakes. This was just sort of what I was always going to do at one level or another. And to speak to something that Amy said, ecology was kind of new. And I was actively discouraged from going into ecology because I was like, what are you going to do? Be a hippie? This was like ecology. You didn't major in ecology. It's just like, so I went into plants. I went into horticulture. I went into plants, and that was very cool. But I mean, I was that kid. My brothers and I had a paper route. I remember filching some bird seed and planting it in a little patch, not on my own property. I grew up in the woods. There was no sun on my property. Planting it in a little patch of seed along the newspaper route and watering it to see what would grow. It's like they're seeds. And I was a little kid. I was like, what? And I was astonished that it was a grass that grew. Of course, it was millet, but I didn't know that. I was like, what does this turn into? It's like, they're seeds of what? I don't know. But then, going up through college, because I was in horticulture and then I was into agriculture. I was at a conference in North Carolina where, after we had breakfast, the president got up and addressed all the ladies in the room and said that the buses were out front for everybody to get on and go shopping for the day. I was at that conference. When I was at the USDA, there was a small working group I was part of. And there was one gentleman, and I don't think it's industry wide. There's always going to be individuals. There was one individual who wouldn't address me. There was only 10 of us sitting around the table. I explained what my research was. I was sitting next to a guy I worked with. His name was Mike. I explained what my research was. And this gentleman looked to Mike and said, well, Mike, if that's true, then can you explain this? And Mike said, I don't know, it's Randy's research. And then I would answer the question and he would readdress Mike. It was the most surreal thing you can imagine. So these things, this was the late 80s, so there's sort of a joke in my family. Actually, if you want to get anything done, just tell me I can't do it. You tell me no, and it's just like, that's what I'm doing next. Got it. Very good. And I think that's, things have changed so much now because there are so many women in the industry, and ecology is not now, what are you going to do? Grow up and be a hippie with an ecology degree? Really the PhD research that I did was an ecological study. It was a crop, and it was insects on the crop, but it was an ecological study. And it was just, I had some great folks along the way, almost all of which were men, because that's who was there. Fred Gould down at North Carolina State University is an ecologist. He came up to me, it was probably 1989. I had not finished my PhD yet, I was almost done. And they were getting ready to hire a soil scientist or a soil entomologist. And he said, Randy, do you think it would have made a difference to you if there was a woman research entomologist on the faculty? And I said, Fred, I have no idea, because I've never seen a woman research member of the faculty. I'd gone through 3 universities and I'd never seen one yet. The few women that were on the faculty were in 100% teaching positions. And of course, now I know, it's like, of course, yes. And they did hire a woman, yay. But it was, they just weren't there. Another person that mentored me was Clyde Smith. He was a professor emeritus at North Carolina State University, Department of Entomology. He was the retired department head. And I had been working with him for a couple of years on a publication that he and I put out. And I needed to do some photography, some micro photography for the publication. And we needed to use someone else's lab space. And that particular scientist was a bit of a, we'll call him old school. And he, Clyde was, Dr. Smith, he was in probably his 80s at that point. And this other professor, who shall remain nameless, dismissed me. There was only 3 of us in the room, and dismissed me fairly significantly. And Clyde Smith just jumped down his throat, pointed out to him that he had hired him and that I was working with him and that he had no right to speak to any graduate student in the department that way, and he should just shut up. And Clyde was just like, have you got that? And the professor was like, she can use all my equipment anytime she wants to, that's fine. So I worked with some really great men that just didn't really, they didn't care if you were, male, female, green, purple, orange, it didn't really matter. They were really excellent mentors. And it was really important in the day when women really were, the minority in all kinds of field positions, whether it was agriculture, horticulture, ecology. I was just glad when we could actually find decent work gloves that fit women's hands. That was a real bonus.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Oh my goodness.
My first work boots were boys' hiking boots, because I couldn't find women's work boots.
A lot of my A lot of my field clothes are boys extra large because they wouldn't, they don't have women's venting field clothes, SPF shirts. Now they do. But when I first started doing this, like 15 years ago.
It was particularly fun trying to find pregnancy work clothes.
Yeah.
And
They're
that's
non-existent.
They don't exist. They don't exist because they're all supposed to have little frills on them. I'm like, not going to work.
That's
Yeah,
something Fran and I definitely take for granted. And
Yeah.
like that's something we don't have to face. What are some other challenges that you've had to face? I know our original question was just to break into the field, but it's
because I want to, and it's something that Randy brought up, and this may have been a challenge, and I'm going to get sidetracked and probably expand a little bit. But when you mention like your parents' perception of what it was you wanted to do, I still find for our industry, when I try to explain to people what I do, they either assume I'm a gardener or a landscaper. They don't, they automatically just don't understand the industry and what goes on. And I think to a certain extent, my parents still feel that way, even though like growing up, we went fishing, we went to a lot of parks and nature centers and things like that. They didn't comprehend the business of what we do. So was that a challenge for you, just making those choices? Perfect example, and it's a little off where I grew up, and I haven't done this in a while, Tom, in Levittown, Pennsylvania, which was a large suburb, very blue class neighborhood, blue collar, working class neighborhood. The big thing, like in our school, sports were horrible. Everyone wanted to be part of the musical theater program. And that was hard for a lot of parents to really comprehend. They wanted their kids to play football or be a cheerleader. They didn't want them to sing. And it was a nationally renowned program. It was the first high school to test Les Mis, and Rent, I think, was another one. And they actually did a TV show about it. I can't remember the name, but it had Rosie Perez about a drama program at a high school. It only lasted like 1 season or 2 seasons, but it was that big of a deal that a book was written about it, and they made it into a NBC thing. So it was challenging parents' perception of what you want to do when you inside know what you want to do. And like, it's not even really, most people that I talk to still don't understand what I do. Was that a challenge for any, and I'm not going to pick any particular person. Was that a challenge to any of you moving forward, getting into this?
Well, I think I'm going to turn it around a little bit. And what I see as a common theme with all of us is we were curious, passionate, good at, these fields. And we were and I think we all have like these positive attitudes, and, we're kind of driven. So those kind of things don't slow us down. We keep going forward. We keep educating people. We keep mentoring people, male and female, and maybe keep working on people who don't quite get it, or just keep going forward. I think that's success, is because it's hard. It's hard in any field, no matter what gender you are, and then it's hard to be young and female and to be respected as an expert in the field. I've encountered some snide remarks when, or they didn't even realize they were negative. I was qualified as an expert witness, before a planning board, and I get up there and they say, "Oh, how you've been working 10 years? What did you start when you were whatever, 10?" And then, our environmental experts, you're much better looking than our environmental expert. It's like, why are they saying things like that? I was so glad when my hair turned gray, maybe I get a little respect. But, we just keep teaching people about what our field is and keep trying to be the best we can be in our field. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges, and this is probably going to get real uncomfortable for a second, being a female researcher, you're outside by yourself a lot in nature, and you're breaking a lot of rules that you're told by your parents and your grandparents and everybody around you. Do not go out to the woods by yourself. Do not go to the same place and the same route day after day. And I've worked out, in the desert by myself and with other field researchers, and there's Mojave green pit vipers out there. They had the highest toxicity of any snake, I think, in the United States. They're one of the most toxic. There's unexploded ordinances. We're on an army base, been over here. There's bears, other creatures. And I've never been afraid. The only thing I've been afraid of is men. The only thing that has made my heart race while I am outside working, doing my job, is somebody coming up to me, and especially if I'm not aware of them, has scared me more than anything else. And I think that's the biggest challenge of, being a woman working in the woods alone. That in of itself is a challenge. And I think part of that is over time, becoming more secure in myself, but also having my parents, even though I'm 35, still texting me, being like, "Are you alone? Are you okay?" Or my husband saying, "Take Mace out with you." I'm like, what is this going to do? Really. But, that I think is something that a lot of women experience, and we're told over and over and over again, the boogeyman, but the boogeyman is some man that I might not know, or, and that something is something that's like been on my mind after, you had asked me what my experience is like as a woman in this field. For the most part, I've had really wonderful, positive experiences, but that's something I think is probably unique to my our situation collectively.
Yeah, I agree. Like, men don't realize that, or now, we talk a lot more about diversity and how people of color maybe feel that, fear or discrimination, and
or
and we can
transgender
relate
people.
to it. Yeah. Yeah, although the boss in me is like, really, we should go out in pairs. Anything can happen. But I've been out in the field
Right.
alone too. When I was pregnant, I guess with my first kid, and my boss was the guy, Dr. John Coppin, and I went out to Staten Island, to the Con Ed Arthur Kill Generating Station to collect data. It was good. I was a little bigger, so I could plow through the Phragmites better, but I was walking in the tidal marsh in the mud, and probably kind of stupid, but yeah, John Coppin, he was so protective. He was so afraid to let me go out in the field alone, When I was pregnant, and I went at night to get my master's in ecology from Rutgers while I was working full time. And one of the professors, he really was nervous that I was sitting there pregnant. He was afraid. I don't know. He thought I was going to give birth anytime. It just made him anxious, So there's a lot of things that we encounter as women professionals.
Absolutely.
I found that even preparing for this today for myself, I was very intimidated, only because I have no experience to I'm trying to understand, and I don't want to insult, and I respect all of you so much that I wanted to make sure we conduct this in a way that we don't insult anyone, but you can tell the story of there's a lot of great things, and you're all very successful, and we want to make sure if there are things along the way that people need to be aware of, to be fixed, or to help someone reach the level that you're at, that we're highlighting those things. So it was, if I end up steering anything in a bad direction or saying something incorrectly, I'm apologizing in advance, but please tell me also.
Yeah. So Carolyn, I do want to go back to what you were just saying about being alone in the field and feeling threatened from men. As a man, what's something that I could do to prevent that from happening?
Don't tell me you watch me every day come out to the field. No,
don't point a shotgun at us. That would be good. I've had that happen.
I've had that happen.
Yep.
Yeah, don't pull your sidearm. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talking to other women. My counterparts at other organizations have had really intimidating interactions with men, and as a male, what you could do, there's nothing other than don't be a creep or a jerk. I don't know what to say.
Yeah,
As far as that goes, like a person just moving through the world is not something that scares me, and it's if I saw you and you asked, oh, hey, what are you doing? That doesn't frighten me. I think a lot of it is more of what women have been told, and I guess this kind of goes back to earlier, if you stay in your lane, this is what you're allowed to do, these are the careers you're allowed to do. I think that's more that breeds that fear rather than a negative interaction, which I've had a few, but I've also had negative interactions with women too. So I think it's more something that's been trained into us as a child, and I think that needs to be broken, that you can be safe moving through this world, I don't have any good advice other than don't be don't be a jerk.
Don't be a creep,
Don't be a creep.
Advice
you
is
guys
good.
are okay. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, when I'll go to some of these conferences, a lot of times they're in cities, and I'll be coming back from dinner, I'm walking by myself, and I have a long stride, so I'm walking pretty fast, and you'll have a woman walking by themselves. So sometimes I'll even cross the street, or I'll kind of announce myself that, hey, I'm going to pass you on the left, and it's probably overkill for the situation. I'm not going to do anything wrong. I know that, but I don't want them to feel unsafe because there's some big hulking person not slowly, but quickly coming up behind them. So it's just, I wasn't sure if you had like just little things like that can make a big difference.
That is nice. I mean, my husband's also 6'3". He's a big man, and he's had the same thing where he didn't realize that he was intimidating a woman, by walking by her really fast, and she jumped and got startled. And I was like, that this is what we've been told from our childhood, that these people are going to hurt you, and majority of people will not hurt you. Almost everybody is good, but I think that was just something that I have a bunch of interns, and when I ask them, when I'm interviewing them, I ask them, what are you okay working outside by yourself? What do you, this is generally you'll be with somebody, but sometimes you might be by yourself. Are you okay with this? And everybody's afraid of bears. Everyone. And I was just like, that, that's okay. But, I think that that's just something I just wanted to say of my experience, that, bears don't make my heart race, but as Amy was talking about before about being pregnant and being in the field, I mean, that was also a challenge, carrying field equipment at a big belly, and then you're 2 miles out in the woods and you have to pee every 20 minutes because you're pregnant. And for me, I chose to nurse my children. And so when I was out in the field, I had to bring a breast pump out with me and pump milk for my kids while I was at work and carry that back and forth. I mean, it was bonkers. And there's no private nursing room or, pumping facility out in the woods. So, there's definitely some unique things, being a woman or, or a parent in this field, and that, you don't, if you're a man, you probably don't think about those things.
Other than you bringing them up, I haven't thought about that stuff at all. Especially the clothes. I really didn't even.
That never occurred to me.
Yeah, I go to the store, I order them online and get them. But to have need different size gloves, and they're just not available. That's
I went to Home Depot the other day to buy gloves for my interns, and there was no smalls. It was large and extra large. And I was like, these hands, they need small.
One size fits all. No, really doesn't.
And I kind of feel like I'm curious that I would love to know the enrollment numbers in colleges for this field, because I kind of feel the trend is going I know for us with the podcast, the bulk of our followers and listeners are female. And
I think it's about 50-50 now, Fran. Okay. I really do. In a lot of the biological sciences, a lot of the field sciences and ecology, we're pretty close to parity.
Yeah, I would say when I was in college 15 years ago, it was just about 50-50 in my program. And then now, even in grad school, my graduate advisor was a woman. She was fabulous, Dr. Jennifer Crumans, and, a real powerhouse. But again, I would say 50-50 everywhere. Even with my, people applying to be interns with me, it's split right down the middle.
Wow. So based on that, if we're saying where we're at now is 50-50 and maybe even headed towards being more female dominated, do you feel that a gender bias still somewhat exists in the industry and that it is still male dominant, even though it's working towards a 50-50?
I think in stewardship, it's 50-50 or maybe a little bit more female heavy but as far as forestry, I feel like forestry is still completely male dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not just who has the degrees and maybe who's working in the field, but who's in control, and, whether politically or heading in government or in the business world, we have a way to go, and we just got to keep at it and keep mentoring people in the field. I've always tried to do that, to my employees, to volunteers, to my grandkids. I'm brainwashing them. But,
Well, I think one of the other things that happens in the sciences right now is that, we have parity in college enrollment and in graduate school, and then it becomes difficult for many women to continue on in science, because I'll tell you quite frankly, it's awkward to interview for a job when you're 6 months pregnant and they're not allowed to ask you about it. And if you choose to take some time off when your children are very small, then, well, you've been out of the industry for a couple of years. What have you been doing? Well, I had a herd of children or whatever, so you wind up with a lot of women functionally taking gap years and then trying to figure out how to get back into the industry, which, depending on who's hiring, may be more difficult. So even though we have parity in school, I don't think we have parity in representation in the professions, because a lot of women either can't figure out how to, or are unable to get back into the industry in the way where they started. I think this is one of the reasons why I think if you look at college professorships, it's still skewed male in most of the fields, not just forestry, in most of the science fields. Because, going through trying to get tenure in a university position, for example, while raising children, a lot of stress, particularly as you're having them, when you're very, it's just like you've just come out of graduate school, you're having kids, you're trying to get tenure. It's very difficult. And so a lot of women step back and never manage to get quite back in at the same level. Or even if they do come in, the men who haven't taken that gap already have, they've got 4 or 5 years in there. So the women are always sort of trailing. And that simply speaks to the way that our country looks at child rearing and childcare, and who does most of it.
Is there
one thing that I would say, to tag along with that is probably one reason why we're entrepreneurial, right? Like if we're going to do something, we're going to do it ourselves, and we know we're not going to have the support, we will get it done. We have a lot of tenacity and a lot of resilience. And, I always feel like you need to assume good intent by people, but if they're going to slam the door in your face, there's another door, and you just got to keep at it. Like Amy was saying, you just need to keep banging on those doors. And so there's a lot of, tenacity, resilience, and stick-to-itiveness, perseverance in this room.
Do you think if you had chosen not to be an entrepreneur, that you would have had the same level of success, or the same opportunities given to you to maybe being like vice president, upper management, something like that. Do you think you would have been able to forge the same path had you not chosen to be an entrepreneur? I know that's a hard question because you're dealing in something that's an unknown.
I think no, when I was working for other people, especially my first job was park naturalist for Essex County Park Commission. Man, that was really cool. We go outside every day. I learned from great people, But then I got a job in consulting. This is the 70s for an engineering firm. And a lot of the engineers at the time, were pretty tough. And, I'll have to say, some political pressure. So let's say they were working for a county doing a solid waste, landfill siting study. So I came up with the criteria. Well, let's not put the landfill in the floodplain, right? Makes sense, right? Well, some freeholder owned that land, vacant land in the floodplain, and he kept wanting that site. We kept kicking out, put back in, or I appreciated having the freedom to fire my clients if I had to. I only had to do it maybe twice, out of 4,000 jobs that I did. But to have that control, really let me move forward in the field the way I wanted to do the field. And, you're, as a consultant, you're still working for somebody, but, you get to do it your way. So for the most part. So,
anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I think it depends on, certainly, even 30, 40 years ago, there were good companies where a woman could rise, and there were good, university departments where a woman could rise. So I think it's really difficult to make a blanket statement. But I think certainly there were a lot more challenges, and I hope it's much easier today. And there's a lot more companies where that is, where they are at least near gender blind when it comes to having women rise in the ranks to the highest levels. I mean, if we look at CEOs across the country, we know that that's not entirely true. But we'd like to think that it's getting closer, getting much better, getting much easier.
Well, let me take it in a little bit different direction. And this is something that Amy said that kind of sparked it. We keep talking about industry interaction. What about government interaction? Do any of you have experience dealing with government, and do you find that a difficult navigation?
So, we did a lot of permitting. Half the time I felt like I was a lawyer or something, and we had to interact with the agencies. And I felt, I felt fortunate to be in New Jersey, where we have strict environmental laws, and it was important to me for the staff of DEP to respect us and that we do a good job. And when we were straightforward, honest, oh, what a concept. And, so working with the staff, that worked out well. We got put to the top of the pile instead of the bottom of the pile or something. I got involved with reviewing proposed permit regulations, when they were proposed, involved with committees, that the government entity started to have a say in that. Sometimes the political appointees, who might have been the bosses, we didn't really understand everything. It might have been a little harder to work with them, but you figure it out. And then for quite a while now, I've been chair of the Open Space Committee here in Raritan Township. And so I've had to work with politicians who really don't know a lot about why preserve open space or, what's important about it. And so working with somebody who's not even in your field, is even more challenging. But I'd always have a strategy. I'd keep my eye on what's important and try to figure out, okay, this guy who thinks he's against open space, I know he likes hunting. So I sit down with him, and for the first time, he already has decided, what I am. And preconceived idea. And I said, I think the biggest threat to our forest is deer, and we need to implement a hunting program. He nearly fell out of his chair, So I guess we all have this positive attitude. We know what the right thing to do is, and we're going to figure out a way to do it. So, we figure out how to deal with how to navigate government.
Awesome.
I think some of that might be more of a different type of strategy. Like, I feel like a lot of men come in and they're like, I'm going to conquer all, and this other strategy of like friend and befriend and find this commonality and like, let's pull it together and make some compromises and make it work. I think, at least on my end with my job, like, we partner with so many different organizations constantly. And so just finding that commonality and being like, we can be friends here. Like, I might not agree with that as much, but you know what, if we do this together, we can get a lot of stuff done. So let's, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, situation where we can have that compromise. And even with government, just like you were saying, finding that commonality of deer hunting, being like, yes, this is how we can work together. And I think, that's a wonderful strategy that I've seen in a lot of the women that I work with. It's not this, my way or the highway attitude. Not that men can't be that way, or somebody of any gender be that way, but I think typically that's more of how females are raised versus males.
My fiance and I just had this conversation. We were at a function, and she noticed it right away. I didn't even realize, and maybe it's a salesman at me. She goes, I see how you operate when you meet someone new. You have a checklist that you go through until you find common ground that you can have a conversation with this person. She goes, do you even know you're doing it? I'm like, no. She goes, yeah, I'm watching you like systematically like check things off, like, nope. Okay, we have this. And then you expand. And I'm like, to me, because I'm socially awkward and I hate small talk. So I had to find something that I can do that. But it was very interesting. She was very in tune and she picked it out right away. Like, she knew immediately that that's what was going on, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
And all these years I hadn't thought about it.
And Carolyn, one of the things you just said, like, perfectly described my wife and I, where I'm like super competitive. I need to win. I don't care what the game is. I need to win. And my wife is like, well, I just want to have fun. I don't care if I don't score a point. We were playing shuffleboard and she had so much fun playing shuffleboard. If I lost, I was like emotionally hurt. And she did beat me a handful of times. With 10 games, she probably won like 4 or 5 of them. But
we like to win. We just have a different strategy.
No,
There we go.
There we
go.
Oh, you did
There we
really
go.
good job.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we have the stealth strategy where we should. I think one of the things, to speak to what Carolyn and like what everybody else was talking about is that sometimes in working in more casual relationships where you're trying to get something accomplished with a politician, for example, or something like that, there is something about creating some sort of common ground, something where we have something in commonality. And I think in some cases, there is a little bit of, when we're talking about women in the industry, I hiked through the Phragmites when I was pregnant. Yeah, I did that. I was in the salt marsh. It was just like, I've been in the wetlands. I've been in the woods. I've been here. I've been there. It's the commonality of them understanding that we too get outside and get dirty. Mm-hmm. And we really do understand this industry, whatever our specialty is. And sometimes, that leads to some really fun conversations, some pleasant surprises. I have the advantage of this group is that my first name does not necessarily indicate my gender.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I have occasionally, particularly in person, run into things where I have been hired to speak or do something, and I show up and they're looking behind me. I'm also only 5'5" and I only weigh about 130 pounds, so I'm not a big person. So probably my favorite story, I was speaking at an arboretum And I was doing a propagation workshop, actually, class, and I was getting set up. And one of the individuals from the Arboretum was helping me set up the room. And this woman came in and walked up to the guy who worked for the Arboretum and said, "Dr. Eckel, you probably don't remember me." And then goes on and talks to this guy and butters him up one side and down the other. "I didn't register for this class and they said it was full. So I hope it's okay. I'm just going to, if you don't say anything." And he let her just go through this whole thing. And I'm at the other end of the room setting up. And she finally finished. And he said, "I'm not Dr. Eckel. That's Dr. Eckel." And she turned with the same frozen smile on her face. And she just mistaken, she's trying to convince this guy that she's known him for a long time. He's 6'2". I'm 5'5", man, woman, beard, no beard. It was very, very, very funny. And I just said, "I don't handle registrations. You'll have to go see if someone can." But she was,
I love it.
it has led over the years several times, probably half a dozen times, maybe a dozen times, where I've shown up someplace and they were expecting a man.
It,
And they got me.
Sometimes people would ask me, have you encountered discrimination, as a woman business owner? And my name was in it, Amy Green Environmental Consultants. So those people didn't call, the ones who didn't want a woman work for them. But sometimes it would get back to me. I worked with this great local engineer, Jim Hill, and he had a client down the road, needed some wetlands work. And I sent a proposal to his client, and didn't hear back, didn't get the job. And I asked Jim, what happened? "Oh, he doesn't want you working for him because you're a woman." So I wouldn't hear those conversations.
I can relate to Randy on the first name because I get that on the flip side. The other
Right.
way, because they hear Fran and they'll talk to me and still think I'm a woman over the phone. And I'm not even exaggerating. I know this sounds funny, but at least once a month I get called babe or hun. At least. And it's,
we know that's not an exaggeration, Fran. Trust me, we know that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
So it's, and then I try to deepen my voice and go, "Thanks, baby." But it's, so I see it on that end. Just it does surprise me hearing that on my end. So it's, that's, I can somewhat relate to that. But I do want to change the direction a little bit, and I know we keep getting sidetracked maybe a little bit. We have focused a lot on the negative, and that's because I feel like the negative has to be acknowledged. Not that I want to dwell in that, but I feel kind of you have to acknowledge it to move on. But the positives, I want to move towards that, because as it becomes more of a 50-50 or better, it has made our industry a way better industry. And I want your opinion on how you feel it's changed, and how you feel it's changed for the better over the years, and where it still needs to be. And we can start anywhere. Debbie, actually, how about with you?
So, since I have a little bit different industry, I don't know that I'm the best person to speak to this,
Okay.
but I do think that everyone faces resistance, and it really doesn't matter what gender you are, right? There's plenty of people that you click with and plenty of people that you don't. And so I think, the positives are just having that greater diversity should increase everything. But oh gosh, I don't remember who said it, but Randy or Carolyn or Amy, I'm not sure. But there's women out there that can be just as abrasive as men, and just as questioning your intelligence or whatever, and maybe sometimes even more so. So, I don't know that, I think that there's just a lot of opportunities, and you just keep knocking on those doors and something's going to open up.
And I think it's good to point out that we always talk about like all inclusivity, but some people are just bad people,
Yeah.
male or female. There's just some people that are bad people. So and
Well,
that
or
makes it
I
challenging.
like to think, they had challenges in their life.
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes that's a
That's
result of something
positivity,
that
Amy.
could be an upbringing issue. That could be a lot of things. And I understand that, and that makes it difficult. But I love trying to find that common ground to be able to work, because even though some people may have those challenges, you still have to work with those people. So or interact with those people. So you have to find a way to make it work regardless. But does anyone else would like to weigh in, just how you feel, like how it's changed over the years, where it needs to go, how it's gotten better?
Well, I was sort of sorry to hear you say that. I didn't want us to be focusing on the negative. I thought we were kind of telling some funny stories about some crazy things, like
Right.
trying to find pregnancy clothes that worked when you were working in the field. But in the last 50 years, there's been a huge cultural shift, and we're all better for it. Women who adore the outdoors, who want to work in the outdoors. There are so many opportunities for them now, and they're no longer told that they have to be, one of three, jobs. Teacher, nurse, and something else. I forget what the other one was. They used secretary. There we go. There's so many opportunities for women now, and it's so nice to know that some of these stories that we're telling seem so archaic and so bizarre that happened. Because not only are women better for it, but the industry is better for it. Every industry is better when you don't cut off 50% of the population from being able to contribute. So, we really have, and speaking to Amy's comment about some of these folks have challenges, and some of it's the way the industry they've come up through, the families they've come up through, the community that they've come up through, and it's just it requires them to do a bit of a little mental gymnastics to realize that maybe they've been told all their lives, or everything they've experienced, that women don't do certain things. And when they realize that they do, they're like, oh, okay. That takes a bit of a shift. But there's been an awful lot of that going on in the last 50 years. So I think now it's more the minority of folks that have struggles with dealing with women in the industry, and the majority of people are just like, doesn't matter, whether your name's Amy, Randy, Fran, Bob, or Steve. It doesn't make any difference to them.
Yeah, for me, my experience, like I know, I'm on the younger end, that I didn't have a lot of the same challenges, that Randy and Amy had, going through school and entering the industry. That wasn't, they'd already kind of like paved the way. Like, it was okay to do ecology, and be a woman. And, and I had a lot of really wonderful experiences with other women. Like my graduate advisor, she held me to a very high standard, but was also like my biggest cheerleader in grad school, really like pushing me forward. And even an interaction I had, which for any time, I know Jen Rogers, who's the student director for Mercer County Park Commission, I was consulting with her on a project, which I was partnering with another organization. And I wasn't quite feeling the way that they wanted to manage the project. And it was really my project. And they were just, kind of assisting. And she's like, Carolyn, is this your project or not? Like, you make that decision. I was like, oh, I do make that decision, like her just really, cheering me on and being like, you can do this, you can, and having those other women in your court that really, bolster you up, and other men in your court that say, you are capable, you can do this. And, I think that's kind of the common thread between all of us, whether it was, our parents supporting us, or, having professors or other mentors saying like, don't be this weak mouse, like, you know what you're doing, you're supposed to be in the room and you take up some space. So, I think things have definitely come a lot farther.
It's for my experience witnessing, and I'm gonna go back to what I feel like. This is a story that still bothers me to this day, and I'll never forget. It's not that long ago. It was 1996, so we're only talking 25 years. And I was at an association meeting that was on public grounds, and all the attendees were males, and there was one female who I had known for a very long time. She was a colleague. We had worked together, who was being groped by someone in the industry who had way too much to drink, was all over, and she very graciously just sat there and kind of took it. And no one said anything. No one said anything, including myself. And that's kind of why it still haunts me. So here's this meeting going on, and during the meeting, he's sitting next to her, and he's slobbering all over. And she just kind of sat there and uncomfortably smiled during this. And that was part of my interaction in this industry as a young adult, kind of coming in, and I look back and I'm like, that really happened. And that's not that long ago. And this happened. And the person that was doing it, the person that it was done to is no longer in the industry. She's left the industry. The person that was doing it, he's fallen from grace in the industry, because people, even though no one said anything at the time, no one forgot that, and kind of he's in the industry, but no one chooses to really deal with them. So, I feel that I don't think that that's something that would happen today. And I feel like it's a different environment, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know what happens. I don't see it happen, but I can't say that it doesn't.
It does.
And that's what bothers me.
It does. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that this was probably within the less than 10 years, one of the research schools that I was working for, I don't want to name names, but we were doing work, and one of the contractors that would let us onto the property wanted me, at the time I was 24. He wanted me to take him out to dinner and spend time with him socially outside of work so that he would let me onto the property. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he was in his 40s, and my supervisor at the time told me, it's not a big deal, just do it, because he's the one that gives the access. And so I called HR, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, what do you think is going to happen with me and this guy alone? Or why do I have to take him out to dinner? And if I was a dude, he would not be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to stop me from getting onto this property that we have a government contract saying that we can be on, so that I spend social time with him. So no, it's still absolutely happening, but it's probably less in the public view. Yeah. But it's still happening. That hasn't gone away. But at least now there's resources like HR. When I told HR, they were on it, and made sure I did not have to take this man out on dates during my job, but it's not gone.
That's sad. That's sad. And like you said, it's probably not publicly. What I regret is at that time not having said something at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if put in that position again, I would totally say something. So,
Well,
and I
then
hope
you're-
other people feel that way as well. So,
Well, I think that's going back to a question Tom had earlier when Carolyn was saying, just don't act like a creep. If you're in a public situation, if you're in a meeting, and you see someone maybe having had too much to drink, maybe not having had too much to drink, who is being a creep, say something, point out to the creep that he's being a creep, escort him away.
yes.
In one of one of our segments on our other podcast episode of The Buzz, I talk about some of the books that we've been reading. And there was a book, and it was basically breaking down that, and it was saying how usually if you were to see someone in trouble and you were alone, most people do something in that instance. It's when you're in a group people are like, oh, well, they're okay with it. And a lot of people are looking at a situation like Fran's and saying, oh, this person's doing something wrong, but I'm not the one who should say something. It should be Bob or Phil or someone else in the room. And since they aren't saying anything, it's not my place to step in. We need to recognize that it is our place to step in. When we see something and someone's in trouble or someone needs help, we need to step in.
But it wasn't just that, because after the fact, I talked to people while still there and said, what was that? And they're like, oh, that's just how he gets. No, that's not, it was perception. And I think a lot of people, because of where he was at in the industry, people were intimidated to speak out against him because they felt that it would impact their career negatively as well. So, which is wrong. It's wrong.
Well, we speak up, right? We speak up when we see, things happening in the environment, or, people selling invasive species at nurseries, or, whatever the issue is, or idling your truck, or whatever. And, we see a positive path forward, and we make it happen. We plant trees in the Sourlands, or we put in electric vehicle charging stations, or we pay people for their milkweed seeds, or we start our own native plant nursery. We have this drive.
So
I think being like a good ally, and whether that's to people of color, transgender people, people of all races, that you need to be their advocate. It's the responsibility, and this is something that I say is my job like all the time. It's your job to save the Ireland as much as it's my job. So it's your job to go out and plant trees. It's your job to remove invasive species. It's your job to say something if somebody's acting inappropriately. You don't, and it's scary and it's really uncomfortable, but that's where this is our planet. This is our community. This is where we live. This is who we are, and it's our job to be the ambassadors of the community that we're building. So, I think we can all do it, and it's scary. And I've been in that same situation too, where something was happening. I was like, it's hard, but, forgive yourself, and next time make a different choice. I mean, that's all that we can do in our lives.
So go ahead, Tom.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah,
I just want to mention, I think courage is, it's a muscle, right? It's something that when we exercise courage, it's easier to do after a while. And so, it does take a lot of courage to stand up to some of these things that you're talking about. And I think the more that you do it, the more you persevere, the more you don't let it happen, or you see and you speak up, the less it's going to happen. So
that's an excellent thought. Thank you. I agree. I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah. So I was going to get, and the question we had written down was, what advice would you give to women interested in entering your field of work? But I'm actually going to change it. And what advice would you give to people interested in, in entering the field? Because it's really not just women who need to get in this field. We need more people in this field overall.
Correct.
I have given it a little bit of thought. So go for it. Learn as much as you can in school and don't forget to learn about the environmental regulations, because they're such an important piece of why we're protecting, it's the vehicle to protect the things we care about. Get out in the field and learn about the plants, not just the plants, the soils, the hydrology, the geology, the climate, and how it all fits together. Yeah, a lot of times I'll see that, like maybe in the nursery industry, they're so focused on the plant, but you got to understand the whole system. Volunteer your time. So don't be afraid to do something and not get paid for it, because it'll pay off later. With the NGOs, do internships, whether you get paid or not, because you're going to learn there and you're going to make contacts there. And don't get discouraged. So when you apply for a job, don't be afraid don't say, oh, they didn't get back to me, I'm not going to get it. Contact them again. They're busy people who are hiring people. so if they say, oh, this person's putting themselves in front of me again, and they'll take another look and they show initiative. So don't be shy. And I think this whole email communication stuff is a negative. I think that you need to add in there some personal communication, whether Zoom or phone or in person, which I guess we'll be allowed to do. So that those are some of the things I've told the people over the years.
No, I think that's one of the things
There's
when
some
you said
wonderful
we
words.
focus on things is at the nursery. Yeah, we're focused on growing great plants, and especially at other nurseries. We try and look at the bigger picture here.
Yeah,
But so many people can get focused on, oh, this plant needs to look beautiful so that someone will buy it, and they'll use things that are detrimental. Like if you're growing a milkweed plant, the purpose of that plant isn't it's to feed caterpillars and feed milkweed beetles, it's to feed the whole food web.
Part of the food web.
And if you're going to use a pesticide on it, well, you're cutting off the part of the food web so that plant looks good, but it's not serving its purpose. So no, that was a really good point as well, is seeing that whole big picture. That's what we preach all the time, is it's more,
you're in the business.
it's more than just plants. It's more than just insects. It's the whole cycle, really.
The funny thing is doing the podcast and talking about it weekly, like Debbie says, it is like a muscle. It comes into focus much more often because we're talking about it more often, given that opportunity. So what other advice would you give?
So with my interns, I constantly tell them to question me all the time. One, questioning, it's good for me, because if I am talking faster than I'm thinking, they need to call me out on that. But I think it's really important that, you're not just out trying to prove yourself, you need to improve yourself. And so every single time, like I'm out doing site walks, I'm asking so many questions, and I definitely push nerves on some people because I think that I'm questioning them, and it's not that. It's that I'm trying to understand their process as to why they want to do something this way, so that I can understand the whole context and be able to replicate that if necessary at other sites. And so I think a lot of people are afraid to ask questions because then they're going to look ignorant. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. So, when I'm having volunteers out, or when I have my interns out, I'm constantly stopping and being like, did you understand that term that I said? Because I want to build that same muscle in them to say, I don't understand what that means. Can you explain it? Because that's what's going to start for them building all those connections and understanding these processes, and also to be really curious, because when you're curious, that's when you can start exploring, and that's when you can start making a difference.
Yeah, I think one of the...
Sorry, go ahead, Randy. I apologize. Sorry.
One of the things, and this speaks to both what Amy and Carolyn just said, we, even in school, we tend to wind up with a lot of labels, and you're either a botanist, or you're an entomologist, or you're a forester, or you're a soil ecologist. And I've always found it very frustrating. The people that know everything about plants and know nothing about insects, the people that know everything about insects and know nothing about plants. I had a young girl march for science a couple of years ago. She wanted to grow up, be an entomologist, and her mother said, what advice can you give her? I said, tell her to learn about the whole environment where the insects live and the plants that they live on. Look at the whole package. One of the things I tell young people, college students, high school students, follow your passion and do what you love. Nobody wants a physician working on them. No one wants a surgeon working on them who hates what he does or what she does and is only doing it because their parents made them be a physician. Do what you love. Follow your passion. And don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot be. Follow your passion and see where it leads you. When I was in high school, I didn't know what an entomologist was. That was not a word in my lexicon. It certainly was nothing that the guidance counselors were saying, well, you could always go to college and be an entomologist. That was not on the list. Learn about, areas that are tangential to your specialty, and it will strengthen you. But at the end, don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do.
Those are great words of
Be
advice.
like Randy and be like, I'll show you. That's not correct. Yeah, I agree with the, yeah, I'm a big fan of biodiversity, which includes the soil and the air and the plants and the water and everything. So, really taking everything as a whole picture and trying to figure out how you can see what's going on around you and get involved in making things better. So, because there are people out there who are working toward making things better, where if you can insert yourself in those situations where you can increase momentum in a positive direction, you'll learn a lot from the people who are already working. And then, once you, like Amy said, you'll make those connections, and you'll be able to take your own ideas or maybe even think of some ideas while you're working with other people. So as you're first starting out, see what's going on and get involved and make things better. And then when you have the great idea that you can go and do something, you're going to have a built-in support system that you've already built. So
Awesome. These are wonderful. Where were you guys at when I was looking to get into this industry? So we always we always end this with this most simplest question that is
But
the
also,
hardest
yeah, our
question.
hardest question.
But I'm going to make it a two-part because I have found today's episode so inspiring that I want to add another aspect to it. So not only do we want to know what each of your favorite plants is, I would like you to each name one person that inspired you. And it can be for any reason, but just one person that inspired you and why. I'll give you all a second because I know I'm throwing something at you that was not planned, but I'm sitting here so inspired right now. I'm just curious who makes you feel that way as well, like as far as in the industry goes, or even outside of the industry, it doesn't matter. But and I'm not looking for a term paper, just quick reason why that person's inspiring to you. Carolyn, would you like to go first? No.
Okay. Well, let's do the plant because I got to do this last time. I know I listed like 6 plants the last time, so I've been trying to narrow it down.
Did it change?
I'm going to say my current favorite plant right this very moment because it looks so beautiful is Nyssa sylvatica. That red is just like the perfect fall time red. So black gum for the common name. It's such a lovely, lovely tree. Just bought a lot of it from you guys.
I think the color with the glossiness of that leaf just makes it pop
goodness.
even more.
I just added to that my YouTube video that's going to come out tomorrow. I just shot
Oh,
it
really?
because it looks awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like such an underrated tree. It's such a great tree for all different types of insects, and I hope to see people planting that more as a tree at their home. So there are so many folks that have inspired me personally and have been wonderful mentors. I know I mentioned some of them. My family has always been very supportive of me, and the professors, Dr. Jason Grabowski, Dr. Frank Gallagher, and Dr. Jennifer Krumans have been just foundational. I think a lot of the good things that I have grown into has been a direct result of their inspiration. But lately, I've been feeling very moved by Robin Wall Kimmerer after reading Breeding Sweetgrass, and I've been taking a lot of the things that she said in that book and applying it to what I am doing in my job. So I guess that's a big lot of people, and my children, and wanting things to be different and wanting things to be better. So I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I think most things don't have a clear-cut answer other than plant more trees.
Yes.
Debbie, would you like to go next? I bet I can guess the genus.
Yeah,
of
I'm
your
like,
favorite plant.
so I do
Which
absolutely love
milkweed?
milkweed. Yeah, and I actually like common milkweed. So it's a little wild, but that's what I love. So the people who inspire me, one is my dad, who really said you can do anything. That is, use your mind, use your connections, and use your don't let people tell you what you can and can't do. And so that's something that has been with me my entire life. And so I'm grateful for that. And then on a wider scale, Doug Talmy is someone that, he sees a solution to our huge loss of biodiversity and native plants. And so he's really inspiring to me. I've never actually met him personally, but he's right on. He knows what needs to be done. So I am really excited about that. And I feel like a worker in his little queue, even though we've never met, but it's inspirational.
Great choices.
Debbie, one thing, you mentioned that you're a milkweed entrepreneur, but we didn't really dive into what that means. So quickly tell everyone what is a milkweed entrepreneur, because I think I learned a little bit about your company, and it's crazy but genius at the same time, the things that you're doing.
Yeah, so we believe that people protect what they know and love and use. And so when we first started this business, we were trying to sell milkweed to people, like the down comforters and pillows people were like, hey, milkweed's a great additive to that. It's hypoallergenic, it's a hollow fiber, it'll whisk moisture away from your body, it'll do all these things. And they're like, you guys are crazy. We're not. And so we are not doing this, which was great because we started our first business, which was down comforters and pillows with 30% milkweed in it. So, and it enhances the natural properties of down. And so that was our first business that we did. And it has all kinds of secrets that it holds. We found that the oil from the plant is an actual pain reliever. We call it the other weed. And so it is something that you can actually apply it to your skin. And so we have another business that uses the oil from the plant. For a while, you couldn't give milkweed seed away. It was not something anyone wanted to plant. So, in 2015, when there was the huge monarch crisis, that's when the seed business for milkweed really came into something substantial. So before that, we were like, okay, what are we going to do with this stuff? And so it was it's a great moisturizer. It's really interesting. So as a perennial, right, hopefully at some point we're going to have enough milkweed to be handling the monarch migration. But we found that if it doesn't benefit people in some way, they're going to end up killing it. So we'll just repeat history of eradicating milkweed. So when we can find a good use for it or several good uses for it, then people will protect it and encourage it to grow more.
I have a little bit of the milkweed lip balm that you guys sent me, and this stuff's awesome. I'm not
Wow.
a chapstick guy, but it's like
funny that Tom didn't share. Well, I guess you're not sharing
Yeah,
lip
no.
balm with someone.
But no, it's really nice, and it smells. If you know what milkweed smells like, it does. Smell
It smells like milkweed.
But if you don't, it probably just smells like plain chapstick. But,
Yeah. So this is actually a yarn that's made with 30% milkweed
Wow.
and 70% cotton. And then we have a group that we work with in Minnesota that collects milkweed, and then they have a local sheep farm, and they make yarn with that, and they have 10% milkweed fiber in there.
Wow.
So just different things that you can incorporate it into. It also is something that that will clean up oil spills. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. I have a video on YouTube that shows that with the Sustainable Monarch nonprofit.
We will share that in our show notes on the website.
Right.
So we'll make sure
Great.
we put the link to the YouTube video for that. So we're going to
Great.
put the links for all your companies on there as well. So
Thank you.
Amy, would you like to go next?
Give it a shot. We don't give short answers.
That's all
No.
right. We left enough time so that you can give us the longest answer you'd like.
So yeah, I'd like to say one of the people I admire, Dr. Christine Papageorgis. She was my boss at my first consulting job and my second one. She went to the other company, and after a while I followed her. She was one of the first women to get a PhD from Princeton University. She got it in ecology. And she really taught me how to do studies appropriately, technical writing, have good ethics, like, oh, I guess I had that, but just she really taught me how to be a good scientist and consultant at the same time. And she's retired now, but she's pretty fantastic. My current idol is Barbara Bremmer, Executive Director of New Jersey chapter of the Nature Conservancy. She just works tirelessly and is brilliant and just, thinks big picture and small picture and is really making a difference in both New Jersey and the world. And my husband, John Bell, and he was one of the good engineers. So he designed recreation facilities, but he also helped us with designing mitigation projects. But what I admired about him was his ethics. And every day in life and in business, you seem to encounter an ethical problem and you try to seek a solution. And, you think, in school, it's just, right or wrong, black or white, but life isn't like that. And you have to figure out what the right thing to do is, for people or for the environment even. And he was always a good counsel. And I admire my kids. They're, my son, Joe, you ask him about electric vehicles or renewable energy, man, he'll talk to you for hours. And my daughter is working for a nonprofit, Working Wheels, and she's an amazing teacher, and they're both raising amazing kids. So favorite plant? Oh God, how do we do that?
And you pick just one.
And you already picked black gum. No, I can't. So my favorite big tree is swamp whiteout, Quercus bicolor. I love
Nice.
stumbling upon it in the woods. It's just stately and it's a good landscape plant now too. Feeds animals. My favorite small tree is Sweet Bay Magnolia, Magnolia virginiana. It's just something about it, those big flowers that bloom one by one and smell good, and it's just a delight. My favorite larger shrub is American beautyberry, Calicarpa americana. I spent some time in Florida and I encountered it here in Flemington. They planted it in the landscape, believe it or not. All right, I love those purple berries. And then small shrub is steeplebush, Spirea tomentosa. One of the early plants I learned when I was Park Naturalist for Essex County Park Commission. A nice wetland plant, purple flowers, my favorite color. And I have it growing in my planting bed here, and it makes me happy. So go ahead.
Awesome. Great choices. Spirea, it's funny when I look around landscapes and see so many Japanese spirea in landscapes, and the native ones are such beautiful options. It just baffles my mind. It really does. Every time I see like a gold mound spirea, and I'm like, come on, there's such great options. But Randy,
And
how
natives
about
are
you?
dare resistant too.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes, yeah, the deer don't eat them. Yeah.
Awesome. Randy, how about you?
Well,
Inspiration
Pat-
and favorite plant.
Inspiration. Apparently, I'm feeling very nostalgic when I was looking at the list. So in some ways, Well, my parents, because they had no idea what I was doing or going into, and they would point that out. Well, we have no idea what you do, but go for it. Which was, I think was really great of both. My father was a safety engineer. My mother was a dietitian. And, the fact that I took over the vegetable gardens and fell into the creek on a regular basis and took over all the gardens and was that child, as I previously pointed out. And they were, go for it. Do what you want to do. We don't understand what you're doing, but go do what you're going to do. And I want to give them a really big shout out for that. My Aunt Verna, my Tante Verna, who got her master's degree in 1924.
Wow.
And she never married. She was a teacher. You couldn't marry and be a teacher back then. She was just an elegant, bright woman. And I wish she had lived longer and I'd gotten to know her better. And then 2 high school teachers, Dr. Castelli, who passed away last year, who taught biology in high school. And it was a fabulous biology class, and was very, very engaging. And we went into a lot of interesting places. And I think it was the first time I remember fascinating structured science being taught, if that makes any sense. Along with Carolyn Lauve, who was the physics teacher. In both cases, they were just fabulous, inspirational teachers when I was in high school. And of course, my family, my husband, who is also a naturalist nerd, which is a wonderful thing. And both my children, who were doomed to also become naturalist nerds, and both work with me now full time. So it's, we joke because we go on hikes and it takes us so long to get anywhere on a hike because we're so busy looking at things. So I think, taken together, a lot of those were family members, and then just everyone that's working in this field. I mean, that's sort of a broad umbrella, but, there's so many people now, including the present company, that are teaching people and leading people gently in the right direction, because when we talked about education earlier, sometimes it's small steps, making people understand that yes, those worms on their milkweeds, oh yes, those are monarch caterpillars and they will turn into monarchs, because not everyone they know they should plant those milkweeds, but why? So those are my inspirations, I suppose, things that have people that have made a difference in my life. And then as for a favorite plant.
That's why we saved you for last. I was really interested to see what you would pick.
Well, thanks. So again, apparently feeling nostalgic. Favorite big tree, I'm going to say sweet gum. Liquid amber styraca fluid. Here's a secret. I grew up on Gumwood Drive. My yard had a lot of sweet gums in it. My father hated them because he hated raking them up. And my brothers and I would throw them at each other endlessly. Great fun. I love it. And right now they're turning a beautiful color. They're just a gorgeous fall color in the landscape.
They really are. And Randy, that was actually another one that I put in my nursery walk YouTube video for the week. And you said the name way better than I did. I think I gave up.
Liquid amber.
I said liquid amber. I don't know.
They're just so beautiful this time of year. And everybody's like, oh my God, is that a sugar maple? I'm like, no, that's a sweet gum.
Purple.
The coral honeysuckle, Lonicera sempervirens. I don't think, I learned it down south, which they tend to call it coral honeysuckle. I guess up here, most people call it trumpet honeysuckle, but I guess I lived in North Carolina for 10 years. So as far as I'm concerned, it's coral honeysuckle. And it's, I just really love it. It's a beautiful plant. I wish I'd known about it when I was a kid. I'm sure I would have planted it on my parents' property, because I planted a lot of stuff on my parents' property. And just hollow Joe Pye weed. Hollow Joe Pye weed. We have one that's growing out of a crevice in the production area, so it gets all the water at once. And Well, this year it lodged with Ida, it fell over, but it grows with all that water. It grows to be about 12 feet tall there. The ones next to my house are only about 5 or 6 feet tall because that's a fairly dry garden. But just the number of pollinators that they attract for a long time in the fall is just awesome. So I can't pick favorite plants, but given this moment today, that's a short list of some of the ones I really, really like.
Randy, could you please plug your nursery as well?
Oh, sure. Toadshade Wildflower Farm. We're a mail order nursery out of Frenchtown, New Jersey, and we're currently offering, I think, about 300 different species of native plants and native plant seeds that we produce all ourselves.
I have an order in my shopping cart right now.
You haven't been shopping during the podcast, have you?
I just want to point out that I'm in Nebraska in the Sandhills, and so we do not like trees.
Fair.
But it's because of our landscape.
Very fair.
Very, very fair. This has been wonderful. I can't thank everyone enough. I think this has probably been our most candid podcast with conversations, and I really appreciate that. Carolyn, before I forget, I want to share with you Breeding Sweetgrass, what I've started doing with that book. Anytime I have a friend tell me that they've taken an interest in native plants or ask me a question, I get on Amazon and have a copy sent to them.
Yeah,
And
that
I'm
is a
like, I'd
great
like this-
book.
Yeah, I'm like, I'd like for this to be if you're interested, I would like this to be your intro. So I've probably given away 10 to 12 copies of that one right now. And it
Nice.
really, for someone that, if that's your intro, it's a very beautiful, to me, it's spiritual intro to that. And it's very, very inspirational. I can understand why you would say that. But our conversations today have been so candid and wonderful. I thank you everyone so much for being a part of this, especially it was kind of last minute. So we appreciate you taking as much time as you did today to be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's talking about inspirational people. There was a reason we selected the people we did. And at some moment or another, you've all been inspirational. Definitely in my life, probably Fran's as well.
Oh, totally.
Even though, Debbie, we've never met in person, but your posts on LinkedIn are really inspirational.
Are phenomenal. Yeah.
So it's you're all doing really great things, and we're really happy to have you. So with that, that's going to wrap it up. So this was, I think, of all the episodes we've had, I've learned more from this one than any other single episode.
I agree.
So, but with that, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to this rooted discussion. For more information, visit the Native Plants Healthy Planet website for links. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
While we're giving out thank yous, let's say thank you to RJ Comer for our theme music to Rooted Discussions. Make sure you listen or download his music at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your music. You can follow us at Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, or Native Plants _Healthy Planets, and also at YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget, we have the question and comment line. You can call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that one more time. 215-346-6189. Call in, ask us a question, leave us a comment. We'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz, and we'll answer it to the best of our ability. And wow, the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group has grown, I think, 200 members in the last week. So that little circle is getting a lot bigger. So make sure you welcome all the new members. And the posts have been extremely inspirational and positive. And I can't thank everyone for being a part of that.
I am happy to report that there are now hundreds of Native Plants Healthy Planet t-shirts out there in some design or another.
I'm actually wearing a new design. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, Fran's wearing one. And that's a little like prairie meadow with a heartbeat type thing.
Nice.
Okay. And that money is going to some of these nonprofit organizations that we have on the podcast to help support their mission. They're doing the boots on the ground work, and we've chosen our first two. One of them is the Sourlands Conservancy, which Carolyn is the steward. What's your
stewardship director?
Stewardship director of, and then the Native Habitat Project, and that cutoff was actually just the end of October, so they're going to be getting their money soon, and then we're going to be looking for some new folks to donate to.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You can find those shirts by going to the Native Plants Healthy Planet website, which is www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a little banner on the top that says t-shirts. You can also find our podcast there, but you're probably listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcasts. When you're there, do us a favor and leave a 5-star review. If you write something nice about us with that 5-star review, I'll give you the shout out on the podcast as well. And hit subscribe. It really goes a long way. And with that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. Thank you to all of our guests for spending time with us today. And coming up next week, we'll have a new episode of The Buzz. The subject still to be determined, but we'll figure that out. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.